it. It's the Rural Nepal Health and Education Project. There's also a flyer about the project on the back table. It's this flyer here, if you want to know more about it. There's a lot of good details on here. Our mission here at the Peace Center is to strive to create a world where our collective needs are met sustainably and nonviolently. And we support Jitman Bosnet's efforts for justice after forced disappearances and torture and even deaths occurred at the hands of the military in Nepal. And I just want to add that this is not a story of something happening in a country far away. This is also happening in our backyard. Impunity for torture, war crimes, waterboarding, black sites. The perpetrators of these crimes against human rights and international law walk freely. Former President George W. Bush just had a presidential library dedicated to himself last week. So I just wanted to welcome Catherine Hughes-Freitag of Peace Brigades International, who will be introducing Jitman Bosnet. PBI, Peace Brigades International, sponsors Jitman, who is a human rights lawyer and a journalist. And if you haven't heard of PBI, or Peace Brigades International, it's an international NGO that protects human rights workers who are in danger for their work by providing protective accompaniment in Nepal, Mexico, and Colombia. So without further ado, Catherine Hughes-Freitag of Peace Brigades International.
So hello, welcome, and namaste to all. We are actually really excited tonight with this program to work with the Center for Peace and Justice and Peace Brigades International, and as Sue mentioned, a new project that we're working on that is looking at the fact that when you have human rights abuses or issues, tell his whole story, which he's got a long story, but he actually helped build a school for children in his village, which is in the northeast region of Nepal, right near Mount Everest. And it's interesting, our film is called Beneath Everest, so it's very appropriate. Because he, as growing up, had to walk 2.5 hours to school and back, across rivers, through little tracks, through a forest, which I'm sure some of the Nepalis here probably can relate to as well. And it was really tough to get the education to continue to do that, and especially for girl children, Dalit children and others, it can be very difficult, and their families may be really struggling, and they end up having to do domestic work, and so they can't end up getting an education and kind of moving on with their lives. And so we're looking at a project that will look at dealing with that issue with scholarships and education area, as well as rural health clinics, which are also badly needed across Nepal at this point. So again, we're hoping that long term, the Nepalis are extremely hard workers, and they are actually having to work many places in the world right now rather than their own countries at times because of the economic situation and because it's not as stable right now politically. But they're really hard workers. And they're going to be able to deal with all these things and develop their own country well. But in the interim, as they're trying to get stability and move forward, we're hoping to partner with them in various ways. And I know when we travel around the country and meet a lot of Nepalis as well, they have a lot of their own projects, and they're sending money back and creating a lot of projects as well. So tonight, we're kind of looking tonight and tomorrow night at connecting the human rights issues, peace and justice issues, with humanitarian issues, because we think they are very deeply created. And many times issues around conflict or revolution that are political actually arise out of humanitarian needs at the same time. So there's a continuum, and they're all actually connected. Sue introduced me. I'm the Executive Director of Peace Brigades International, the USA component. Our main office is in Washington, D.C., so I travel both around the country, within Europe, where we have a lot of our meetings where some of our other offices are, and our coordination office, which is in London. And then in the field, we have offices, as you mentioned, Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia. We'll be moving to Honduras this year because of all the requests for us to move in and to support human rights activists there. We're also just moving into Kenya, in Africa, and we've been in Nepal since 2006, 2007. We're still there. and we're moving back into Indonesia. We were pushed out from Papua, which is, it's very tough to be there. Even the International Red Cross was asked to leave a couple of years ago. But we're finding a new model where we'll probably be based in Jakarta, but be able to have the human rights activists come back and forth and try to help protect them with a little different model. So our organization's been around about 31 years, and we have a model that we've developed that's called protective accompaniment. A lot of times I have a slideshow, but because we're trying to focus on the movie and other speakers too, I'm not going to do as long of a presentation. But if you're interested, you could talk to me later as well. Our main model is that we have international volunteers who have T-shirts, and you'll see some of them, I guess not in the movie now, but big T-shirts that say PBI. And when we move into a country, we're always locally requested. So there'll be a journalist, there'll be a human rights defender, there'll be a community that's at risk and being targeted with death threats. They're burning houses down. They're arresting their leaders on false charges because they're doing human rights activism. And our mandate requires that that activism always be nonviolent. So there are things, civil society issues, like they're building schools possibly and being attacked, or they're reporting on journalistic issues that are controversial, or they're, as in Jitman's case, defending human rights victims, that it's very sensitive because of the perpetrators and where they sit in power. And we physically walk around with these people. Our nickname is the unarmed bodyguards, so that gives you a little bit of an idea. 2 people at a time at any one time for safety's sake. We have a house where all the volunteers live in one spot and work together. They're from all over the world, global north and global south, North America and Europe. And then we have a backup network that is what really makes this work, where if someone gets in danger, that team will let us know. We'll be there physically with the person so that they're putting a spotlight on what's happening. There's an international witness, so that maybe a paramilitary or a checkpoint or an army official will back off a bit and won't move forward and attack that they would without the international there. But we're backed up by international networks all across the world, where I'll get a call or an email will come through for an alert like it did yesterday in Mexico, saying in Oaxaca, a group called Codiga, and Alba Cruz is an attorney there who's been a great risk, that they were targeted, their offices were ransacked, and one of her staff had been arrested on false charges. Right away, we get in touch with the US Congress in the US, maybe the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, maybe the UN in New York, depending on the situation, maybe the State Department, who we meet with to get information about human rights abuses often, and then they will use their pressure on the government of Mexico or contact our ambassador there and have them go out and make sure that that government is following international law and its guidelines, which is to protect civilian protesters or protect civilian people. And that's their responsibility under international and mostly national law. It gets trickier when some of the countries we're in do not have a really good implementation of national law. And so, for instance, in Nepal right now, for human rights issues, there is 100% impunity. That's actually the hardest country we work on in this issue, where not one single case of at least 16,000 killed and over thousands and thousands disappeared people, there's not one case that's gone to court and been prosecuted yet. And so it's a hard struggle. And the bottom line is you want to move on to peace and forgiveness and get past it. But if you don't have justice for the victims or the communities, then the perpetrators, those people, which it could be the Maoists or the Nepal army or others, they'll repeat it. They'll feel like, well, I did it once and I got away with it, I'll just keep doing it. And so that creates a society where it's not safe. The human rights activists that are trying internally to push for their own activism, own advancement, are being targeted and are being threatened and sometimes killed. So Peace Brigades International is nonpartisan. We don't stand on either side. We stand for human rights and justice, but we're not standing on either side of the issue. And so in that case, we act as a firewall for the people on the ground, the activists, to be able to do their work. We don't want to tell them how to do it. We may not know it as well as they do because they're based in their own country. They know their own culture and how things work. But we create a safe space for peace for them to do their work and to continue to do it. So that's our mission. At any one time, we may have up to 80 volunteers in the field around the world in these teams. If anyone's interested to volunteer, we'd love to have you. We have all ages. Normally it's about 24 as our youngest because it's a lot of responsibility being on these teams and protecting human rights activists, and there can be some pretty crazy situations, pretty dangerous situations. One of the key things we're very proud of is that we've never lost a volunteer. So in all of these years, 31 years, we've never lost someone. And so that shows that we've really had a good system in place for the deterrence. Again, part of this is a very key analysis. So let's say we're working with an activist in Colombia on the ground from a community, San Jose de Apartado, which is a peace community. We actually sponsored a speaker through Albuquerque. Bobby was there, Mom and Dad, who actually came a couple years ago, and we did a national tour, and he's one of the main founders of this peace community. And PBI actually accompanies the whole community. And we were with them when they went back in to reclaim their land in 1997 after the paramilitaries pushed them off. It's been very dangerous for them. Some of them have actually been injured or killed over the years, but they tell us that without peace brigades there and some other international accompaniers, they would not have been able to go back, and they would not be growing the villages and reclaiming their land and doing organic farming and kind of taking back their lives like they've been able to do. So, so that's kind of how it works. In that case, we do a lot of analysis on who are the perpetrators. Is it the government? Is it state level people? Is it local people? And will our deterrence method work, which is to put pressure mainly on the government to make sure that violence doesn't happen anymore? So a lot of times in Mexico, another example, Guatemala, some of the drug cartels, you know, the government will say, oh, we have nothing to do with them. But when we do our analysis behind the scenes, we know that there are close connections, and that if the government were to put pressure on those drug cartels, they'll back off. So there is a connection. And so we do a lot of analysis on security analysis, we call it, how it works, so we know what deters. And the key is to make the cost to those perpetrators of violence more than the benefit. And so that's how the unarmed bodyguard, which you would never think that 2 or 3 unarmed international people walking by a person who's threatened by a well-armed army could actually keep that person safe. But it actually works. We've had a really good history over the years, and no matter where we are, we have more and more requests than we can actually fulfill. So I hope that you'll stay in touch. You're on our list now, and we can stay in touch with you. And the more we have partnerships and people from all over that are aware, that can do some emergency responses, that helps the process move forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jitman Basnet. I'm very honored to have worked with him over the past several years. I met Jitman in 2008. Peace Brigades International has accompanied him for a while, and he'll tell you with his story. He's going to talk and tell you his story. As Sue said, he's really the most important person here because the film that we're going to show and the one we're showing, he's very connected with the whole history of the country of human rights activism. The one was actually the story and was based on the torture that he underwent in 2004. And he was disappeared by the army, and I'll let him tell you the story. But he is an amazing survivor. He got out, he moved forward and actually saved the lives of 29 people that were there with him under great threat to himself. And then has had to go in exile many times back and forth, but always heads back to Nepal to try to continue his work because he feels so strongly about helping his own people and his country move forward and getting justice. And we've been, for the last 2 years, he's been in the US due to safety issues. There was an attempted attack on him in June 2011 in Nepal, and he had to come out, and Peace Brigades helped him do that. And we've been doing tours, advocacy work, speaker tours all over the country, and it's been amazing how we've been able to highlight the issue of Nepal and hopefully trying to get some pressure to move forward and some awareness of it. And also the lovely things about Nepal, because he talks about those as well, the culture, the people. And I really enjoyed meeting so many people around the country, too, from Nepal. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jitman. He'll, as I said, tell his story. We'll show you the film. But I think you'll find it's really interesting. It's also being shown at several film festivals around the country right now. And then we'll have kind of a response to him, a formal response to some of the issues that it raises. And then Sue and I and him will do a question and answer session where we can have some discussion toward the end. So thank you for coming. And Jitman, go ahead.
Namaste. Thank you very much for coming here. I'm honored today to be with you. Thank you, Catherine. Uh, Thank you, Susan Scruman. And I have a whole bunch of lists I want to thank. You know, you have done so much for human rights, peace, and justice around the globe, locally and internationally. Before starting, uh, we are very sad to hear. Just recently, we lost Rosamund Evans, a great human being, a great activist. That is a property of ours, our human beings, our human societies. We need more people, those kind of people. And when we lose those people, and we extremely, we become sad. So I want to pay my tribute to her and her work, and we will remember you always, forever, forever. We will keep you in our mind and our heart, and our society will remember you forever. And we have so many. This is a incredible city, a place. So many people are activists here, and I love activism. Thank you very much for sponsoring this program. I want to thank to Peace and Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, Peace Brigade International, United Nations Association, Albuquerque chapter, and thank you Nancy and Herb. They are working, you know, maybe for a couple of months, you know, informing, providing information to their networks. And Bobby is here. Susan, Carr, Rita, Hildegard, yeah, so many. And my Nepali friends and all participants, I want to thank you. Thank you very much for joining with us today. I have only 10 minutes. So many things Moby will speak itself. And previous speaker, Susan and Catherine, most of the issues they covered up. I will not, I forgot, I saw Ravi. He also helped, you know, supporting the program. Thank you, Ravi. I will not talk that much about the beauty of Nepal. I will not talk about Mount Everest and beautiful land, those rivers, second largest capacity, hydroelectricity capacity. It's dark now. I will not talk, you know, touristic destination, about touristic destinations. I will talk about our struggle, how Nepalese people, they have been struggling for years, since 1951, to get freedom, to enjoy within a democracy. We have been fighting, we have been struggling for years, and so many Nepalese people, they have lost their lives, they have lost their family members, beloved family members, and still our struggle is going on. We had 239 years long monarch. To get rid of monarch, to kick out the monarch from the system, we had to sacrifice. So many Nepalese people had to sacrifice their life. And still, there is no monarch today, but there are many kings. So many kings. One king we kicked out, but there are so many kings, which are the trouble for our country. I started working in human rights and justice just after the Maoist movement started in 1996, and until 2006, and it was 10 years conflict. It's, people say armed conflict, people's revolution, civil war, whatever. During this time, so many human rights violations occurred across the country in Nepal. I witnessed personally, as a journalist, as a lawyer, I witnessed people were disappeared, their family members were illegally detained, tortured, and killed, extrajudicially killed, executed by Royal Nepal Army and by Maoists also. It's a 90% cases are happen from the government side and 10% from Maoist side. So both in human rights violation, both are responsible. Only the ratio percentage is different. I was a journalist, and I wrote an editorial for my magazine. It's called Sagarmatha Times. It's a Nepali name of Mount Everest. I was an editor of that magazine. I wrote an editorial about king's asset. Our king was rich, and 99% people, they were, poor. They were having a problem, they were dealing with poverty. And most of the lands, properties were captured by limited families. And rest of peoples were below poverty line, and they were struggling. They had to go to cross India and other countries for a job to feed their family members. It's still going on now. Nepalese people, they are very honest and very hardworking people. They are. They believe in work. But they are poor. Why? Why they have been suffering from poverty, although they work very hard. 18 years, if you look at in Saudi Arabia, in Arabian country, if you look at them, 18 hours a day they are working. Still they are not being able to, to feed their family. So I wrote that article in Sagarmatha Times in November 2003, and in the same issue, I wrote an article about Doramba massacre, where 21 civilians were killed during the ceasefire by Royal Nepal Army. And my hard days started. I had to leave home. I had to change my location. I had to, hide somewhere underground, sometimes in friend's house, sometimes relatives' house, sometimes, outside of Kathmandu, inside of Kathmandu. And in February 2004, I was arrested by Royal Nepal Army. Before that, in 2002, I was kidnapped by Maoists and tortured almost one day. And 2 years later, in February 2004, I was arrested by Royal Nepal Army and kept in a secret military detention, underground detention. And I spent 6,192 hours blindfolded, and all the time hands were tied on back. I didn't see human faces during all entire time. And I witnessed how people were treated, how people were killed, how a human being can do those things. We never imagined. I witnessed there. Although I was blindfolded, I realized, from my internal eyes, third eye, my 2 eyes were blindfolded, covered, but I had a third eye. I realized, I saw those scenes, how people were killed, how people were raped, without medication, without water, how they died inside the military custody. And their whereabouts, their stories, their information were never provided to their families. And they lied, Nepal government lied, always lied to the court and international communities. We never arrested anyone. You are open to visit. But their military barracks across the country were full with the civilian detainees, without charges, without any formal charges. I spent 9 months, 6,000 hours, 258 days without any formal charges, without any information. I was inside, and they were telling to court, we haven't arrested Chitman. He's not in our custody. There were many people there. They were lying to the world, not lying to United Nations, lying to their own people, their court. And because of pressure, national and international pressure, I was released after 258 days in 2004. And for the first time in Nepalese history, I challenged to the monarch through the legal way. Yeah. Earlier Catherine mentioned 29 people. They were left. There were hundreds of people inside with me, but during that time, most of the people, they died or they transferred or what happened, we don't know. And 29 people remained at last point before my release. And they requested me, Jitman, you can write, you are a lawyer, you are a journalist, you can play a role to save our life, human life, our life. We didn't have permission to talk verbally. We had only three words we could speak at that time, only water, toilet, and hungry. No enough adequate food, no water, no treatment at all. I was released, but on condition that I had to meet people, army people or army personnel, every 15 days, twice a month, that they were following me, where I'm going, what I'm doing. And every time they had to, they used to threaten me not to tell anything about the military custody, anything about other people. I was, confused what to do. People are suffering inside, and they have asked, I have seen, witnessed their condition. Anytime they could be killed. And I decided one person can be killed, but 29 people can be saved. So I choose that side, that I don't care. I would not stop my voice. I started a campaign to get them out from the military custody. I went to Amnesty International office, United Nations, local human rights organizations, Supreme Court, National Human Rights Commission, everywhere where, I could go that time. But on the other hand, anytime they could have, arrested me. I didn't care that. And I was a witness in National Human Rights Commission, and National Human Rights Commission mentioned my name as a witness, and that the report was submitted to Supreme Court, and Army got the copy, and my hardest day started again. That I had to quit my regular routine meeting with them. My journalist friend, they asked me, Jitman, don't meet them. They have found a report. Your name is mentioned, so be safe, how you could. So I didn't have any safe place in Kathmandu, so I went to United Nations office. They managed shelter in a Swiss diplomat's house, and I was rescued in 2005 when country was declared emergency, and entire power was captured by king, and many civilians, journalists, human rights activists, politicians were arrested, and I left country and I came to India. It's been 2 years, went back to Nepal again after political changes, when the political parties and Maoists, they came together and started the joint political movement against the monarch, and finally they got succeed, and I went back to Nepal and started again the campaign against impunity. So many victims were on the ground. They were asking for justice for years, and I myself, I tried to get justice, and for others, I started supporting them. And first time I filed a case against the king in Nepal and top military generals. I wrote a book, Catherine Sue mentioned earlier. I staged a hunger strike in front of Parliament, demanding the high-level investigation commission. We established a lawyers forum for human rights that works for poor people, women, and for human rights violation, victims of human rights violation, abuses. We provide free legal services to them. We support them. We have a number of networks throughout the country, and we have volunteer lawyers, and we support them. And when I can remember it was in 2007 when I started working with PBI, and PBI started supporting me, protecting me when I got death threats from unknown phone call because of my work, because of my voice. And again, I had to leave the country with the help of United Nations and Danish Embassy and the PBI. I can remember that day when I went to United Nations office asking for help, support, protections, and they didn't have mechanism on the ground that time, and I didn't know about PBI at that time, and they suggested me to go to the PBI office, and I went and knocked door, and our relation started from that point. So yeah, we have been, still a struggle is going on. Our voice haven't been stopped. So many cases are pending. Victims are waiting for justice. Catherine said 100% impunity. It's the same. Political parties, all political parties, government and Maoist, both groups, government groups and Maoist groups, they were agreed in 2006 to form a transitional mechanism, Truth and Reconciliation Commission and Disappearance Commission, within 60 days of signature. It's been 6 years. No commission has been formed. None of the perpetrators has been brought to the justice. We tried to file FIR in the police station. Police rejects. Police doesn't. Once we were in Solukhumbu, just close to Mount Everest. Solukhumbu police and PBI team was also with us, and without a dead body, we cannot register a FIR. What a shame! A police officer, the chief of the police, local police, responds us, Jitmanji, we cannot register a FIR. We cannot start investigation without a dead body. It's 8 years ago. We had a discussion. He threw files. We had to leave, police office. There are so many other issues. Later, we found he was also involved in killings. I think I crossed my barrier, 10 minutes barrier. So many things you will see. It's a great movie. Tulsi Bhandari, he supported us providing movie at last stage. So explain how we are unable to screen Badsala we had planned earlier because of visa denial of producer, director. And at the last minute, Tulsi Bhandari. It's a great movie. It's broader. It covers broader overviews of Nepal. And I want to thank Tulsi Bhandari, and he also, he has a long history of a struggle. I helped him, my team, Lawyers Forum for Human Rights, helped him on the ground in Nepal when he was having some problem, legal problem, and we were supporting, and we supported them. So enjoy with the film, and later, if you have any questions, we will be with you. Okay.
I did hear reports on the news, but I didn't have a context to put them in. I knew there was a Maoist rebellion going on, but I didn't have the fuller context. Also, I observed tremendous courage on the part of the people who had the courage to get in the street and call for the monarchy to step down. That took incredible courage. And then finally, I was moved by the courage of the filmmaker. That really moved me, maybe because of my background in video. But now Jitman is going to give us a brief update, because this film was made in 2010. So he'll give a brief update since the film was made, and then we'll take questions.
And we need to turn off the projector, because I think it's in our eyes and it's hot.
Just hit that button twice.
Thanks, Robbie.
Ah.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Okay.
Jitman.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you very much for your patience and your time. The movie, it's a little bit longer. It's a long, documentary, but it gives a lot of information. What happened in Nepal actually? So many people visit to Nepal. They don't feel in depth what is going on there. They see beautiful mountains, rivers, beautiful, people are general life is going on. So what's the problem? In various forums I spoke, people asked this question. Just recently I visited Nepal. There's nothing is going on. From touristic point of views, a tourist just visit country, climb mountains, enjoy his time, but don't feel, they don't feel actually what is in-depth problem in Nepal, what is going on, what happened. And when we speak in the program, they listen, they hear, they know all these kind of issues, and they express their views. Oh, we are not agree. We just visited. Nothing is going on there. This video just only explains until 2010. After 2010, so many things happened. So many things. Political parties. I don't blame to people. People, one guy he was Nepali Congress supporter. He voted to Maoist. He had a lot of hope from the political changes. More than 60 years long people's uprising movement, 10 years long insurgency, and a long history of people's struggle. And they had a lot of hope as a citizen, as an activist, as a victim. I had a lot of hope that our country, 26 million people, hardworking people, beautiful land, a lot of rivers. We are second largest capacity, hydro capacity, electricity capacity in the world after Brazil. Beautiful land, anything you can grow. Anything you can grow. But we are poor. Why? I don't blame to the people. The reason I blame to those who enjoyed their power. They didn't care about people. They didn't care about people's various different ethnic groups, discrimination, caste discrimination. I wanna tell one story. Why Maoist movement started from Rukum Rolpa, from a very poor community. The question is, people from the those areas, they didn't have access to the government. They were very far from the capital. They didn't have health access. Their children, they couldn't send to school. They had to go to India for work, 6-month work, and come back to Nepal. Again, after 6 months, go back to India and come back to Nepal. Why it happened? Because we tried. The transformation, changes, for positive changes, we tried. And people, they sacrificed their life.
didn't change. We had a constitution assembly, 601 inclusive constitution assembly, to draft a new constitution, to give a new face of Nepal. Everyone, people, leaders, everyone was telling, new Nepal. What is new Nepal? Constitution Assembly could not draft the constitution within 2 years, and they extended time. 6 months, 1 year, 6 months, and finally last year, Constitution Assembly dissolved. Those people you saw in the movies, they were enjoying, after they felt their victory. We would get a beautiful Nepal, transformed Nepal. Everyone has would enjoy, the new Nepal. Everyone has rights. Those dreams completely gone today. Because of political differences, no one can trust each other. Now there is a chief justice in Nepal, power, in the cabinet. The prime minister of Nepal is the chief justice, sitting chief justice of Nepal. Can you imagine?
What do you mean by chief justice?
Sitting chief justice was picked off by political parties. Now he's a prime minister of Nepal.
And to explain kind of from our system, so there's the differentiation between the different parts of government, legislative, executive, judicial, and it's supposed to be run by the group that's elected by the people, which would be the legislative or the executive. And in the case of Nepal, because they couldn't pass this the constitution in the time required, they had to dissolve this constitutional assembly that you saw, the big parliament that they voted on. So that was dissolved, and they still couldn't agree on how to move forward. And so they came up with an agreement with a small group of the key parties to actually have the sitting chief justice of the Supreme Court, judicial, pull him over, even though he has nothing to do with elections and shouldn't have anything to do with that section. So outside of the rule of law, outside of their own constitution, and he's now trying to get elections to move forward. And we met with the US State Department last month and brought that up as an issue. And our position as a government, the US government, is it doesn't matter, whatever they've come up with to try to move the elections forward, we think the elections will solve everything. And if you're from Nepal, you know that there were elections, and they sat there for 5 years and couldn't get this constitution passed, so that's not going to be the final answer. So there's still a lot of concern around what will happen. But there are elections that will be moving forward, possibly in November, that the Carter Center, who is actually in Nepal, will probably monitor.
Yeah, unfortunately, so far the new government hasn't been able to declare the new election date, and the entire political scenario is divided in two, and one group is supporting to this political mob, and another group is opposing. They are demonstrating against, protesting against this new political development. So people and the international community is confused what would happen next, what is next. Mm-hmm. So the three main goal were in the peace agreement that happened in 2006. The main goal, was the new constitution, to reform the new, political system, Nepal's political system, and Nepalese people, they have been demanding and asking and fighting for new constitution that couldn't be happen within the given date, and because of that, the Constitution Assembly, because of political differences, Constitution Assembly dissolved. We don't know, not sure when we will get a new constitution. Second thing was justice. Political parties and Maoists, they agreed to form, the transitional mechanism, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Disappearance Commission. Within 60 days of, signature date, it's been 6 years. We don't know how many years it would take to establish those mechanisms. And the third thing is a peace process. The peace process completely failed. 19,000 Maoist armies, they were in a different cantonment. And there was an agreement in peace accord, comprehensive peace agreement, that there would be a new national army after the integration of between Maoist army and Nepal army. Nepal army was the family army, king's army, to support, not to protect the country, but to protect. They demonstrated that they tried to protect the monarch. And the Maoist army is completely a party's army, not the national army. So to form a new army, national army, and there was an agreement of integration between two armies and the next new army, national army. Now, around 1,000 People's Liberation Army, PLA, or Maoist rebels, cadres, whatever, they are in a process of recruitment, not the integration. Integration and the recruitment is completely different process. Mixing two armies for new army, and the whole army is recruiting those people, and they are getting training, and they are frustrated. Most of them, they have already given off the training, and it's still going on. Last week there was a press conference from the army that it would take a long time, it's still a long time. So 3 main goals of Nepalese people and political parties and the governments, according to the peace agreement, is completely gone. Peace agreement fell, no justice, and no constitution. So people, what is going to be happen there next? If they, some groups are talking, oh, peace, we have peace agreement, we are succeeded. But without justice, thousands of people, they are in the street asking for justice, without fulfilling their demands, without delivering justice, there would not be peace. So peace and justice are interrelated things. Without justice, without peace, there would not be peace. So it's the update.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you a question, Jitman. What would it take to convene a Truth and Reconciliation Commission? What would it take for that to happen?
They did that. It has, but explain what happened.
Yeah.
Or to revive it?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah. Initially, political parties, they were so excited. Oh, we will do, everyone, political leaders were there talking, oh, we will do whatever we have done, that is for you, people. We will deliver justice. But the differences, they couldn't come together. They didn't have a concrete, agendas. And the, most important thing is those perpetrators who were involved in torture, grave human rights violations, they were enjoying in the power after the political change. Still they are in the power. They are minister, they are army generals, they have been promoted, awarded, and the victims communities, poor victims, they have been protesting, Kathmandu. You saw in the videos how remote areas, no journey, no transportation facilities, no roads, no buses. So people have to come to Kathmandu for their official purpose. 7, 8 days, 10 days walking. If you from the western border, if you go to Kathmandu, it takes weeks because of strike, bandhus, and so people, they have been struggling financially, socially, and now they are divided by political parties.
Yeah, and for PDI, Peace Brigades International, we are working with a number of groups. We're accompanying, you saw the woman whose daughter had been killed. We accompany her. We accompany a number of women's groups as well that are in the South, in that Tri area, a lot of them journalists trying to report that are being targeted. Another group called Advocacy Forum that's working with the victims groups as well to bring it forward, and then Jitman Basnet and his group. As far as the Truth and Justice Commission, what has happened is they've tried to push it forward, but in a very weakened state, so that what would happen is there's some key players, including the Attorney General, who's been quite corrupt in the past, that could override or throw out any of the cases. And as also part of the process, there's an amnesty clause included in it that would allow amnesty for any of the conflict revolution era crimes on either side. So the Maoists now, who have had a lot of people killed and injured by the army, and the army who's still in power, are kind of joining hands and agreeing to sign this kind of legislation or piece going forward that would allow amnesty to both sides. Now, what's happened since then is the UN has come out, and the UN Navi Pillay, who's the High Commissioner, has written a really important report in October, November of last year saying that that won't work, that it's against international law, that under international law you can't give amnesty to people that commit crimes, war crimes, and so that both sides, and she's done a whole series of documentations. Jitman's also worked with a group called Trial, which is a Swiss law firm, and they've just written a report that they sent him yesterday, actually, that talks about all these abuses and the cases and the fact that this Truth and Justice Reconciliation Committee will not work, that it's against international law, that it's allowing amnesty for all of the victims. And so they've moved it forward, but they've tried to do it in a watered-down way. And in fact, Jitman didn't mention, but he's got so many things that he's involved with. But the reason that he was attempted attacked on him in June 2011, before he came to the U.S., when PBI was accompanying him, was because he was part of a major UN conference in Nepal that was beamed all over the country. He was arguing that they couldn't have a watered-down Truth and Justice Commission, that it needed to have teeth in it, that it needed to be something that could actually move forward and stop impunity. And so we believe that that's one of the reasons that he was threatened and targeted, was because those people that are responsible, both in the army, who knows, and the police, who've been promoted, and possibly even the Maoist side, none of them want this to go forward and to have him, to be able to have the crimes prosecuted and to move forward, because then they're all going to be guilty. And so that's a big piece of it.
Perhaps we could open it up to
Yeah, let's do
questions
that.
now, and
Let's
then
do that.
at the last, it would be nice to address what can we as Americans, as people living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, what can we do to help some of the suffering we saw in the film?
Yeah.
Ravi?
Yes. Sounds like, from what you're saying, since the power, there was a shift in power, and the Maoist leader came into, won the election, that was only in name. It sounds like you're saying that there was really no change. The people who were powerful before are still powerful now. There wasn't much of a transition. Have there been any positive developments since that election that you can tell us about?
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, Maoist won the election, and they didn't get the majority, but they were Maoist was the biggest party, became the major political parties and #1 political parties after the election. They didn't get the majority. The problem of Maoist, when they got the position, power, their voices, is changed. They changed their promise. Whatever they promised before the people, they completely they are sold out now. Maoist leaders and the army generals, they are in the same position now. They are shaking hands, they are talking. I give you one example. One army colonel was arrested in UK. He was involved in torture in barrack in Thorai. Many people were tortured by him during the conflict period, and he was in the peace mission, in UN peace mission, and he was in UK in January, and he was arrested by the UK police. under the universal jurisdiction. And Prime Minister Baburam Bhattarai was the Maoist leader. He wrote the letter to British government, David Cameron, to release him. And what they say, not only later, they put pressure. They protested. They called UK embassy to the foreign minister office and handed over a letter, protest letter. They paid a huge amount of money for lawyer. The same lawyer worked for the Chile, what is it?
Pinochet.
Pinochet, case. The same lawyer they paid 50,000, 100,000 pound. They paid for lawyers, and they helped. They provided money for bond. So it's one example. There are millions other examples. So they are together now because they want a safe side. Those faces, bloody faces, from Maoist side and government side, army side, police side, they are together. They are building, safe side, protection, and victim side, they are always poor. Susan asked me, the reason, one of the reason, the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was our position, victim position was divided and very poor, weak. Victims groups, are divided. So there is no development, political development. It's getting down, not getting up. It's going down, unfortunately.
Another question? Maureen?
Well, I have one question to
Jitman.
Jitman, yeah.
Jitman.
Jitman.
I'm concerned that I do not understand, the which group and what group, and it just seemed like a whole mess of fighting. And who imprisoned you?
Oh yeah, I was not involved, and I don't believe in any violent activities, and I was not a active member of any political parties. First, in 2002, I was because I was writing news articles, I was involved in journalistic field, and I was an editor of the magazine. And I was a lawyer. I used to help support to other victims. And first in 2002, I was traveling to Solukhumbu in Rameswaram district, but I was heading to Solukhumbu to visit my parents' home. And on the way, there was a Maoist gate, and I was interrogated and captured by Maoists and tortured because I had published a number of articles about their, human rights, their involvement in human rights abuses. Later, the government side. So I'm the victim from the both side. But the government side was very terrible because it was long, and government had jail and police, and they can prosecute me. I would be so happy if they had put me in jail with a formal charge, but they didn't do. They kept us, they detained us underground with the extreme torture, killing, number of people. So it was from, there are millions, other, hundreds, thousands people suffered from both sides, displaced. Everyone, Nepalese, has suffered directly or indirectly. It's a conflict, Their family members, their friends, their, parents, brothers, sisters, they were suffered. So I was suffered on both sides, I would say.
Um,
So-